Hey, good evening. It is 8:48 p.m. Just cooking a little bit of late dinner. And tomorrow we're gonna bake some sourdough. So before we bake tomorrow, I'm gonna feed the starter, which has been in the fridge for 1 week now and definitely needs to be fed. It slows it down when it's in the fridge, but it's hungry. As you can see, it's separating a little bit, which is not a problem. Anytime you feed the starter, you want to do half flour and half water. You want it to be room temp when you strike it in there because you don't want to shock it. All this has been in the fridge is no problem. So I use King Arthur's flour, which is non-GMO. It is not organic, but it's also only about 17 bucks for 25 pounds, so pretty good. So I'm gonna put this, this is a 1/3 cup of flour. I'm gonna put a 1/3 cup of water in there and then we're gonna mix. So we've just mixed our starter. We've fed it equal parts flour and water. And you can see it's already starting to bubble up because it was hungry. We're gonna put the lid on and let this feed overnight at room temperature. Right now its smell is pretty tart. Tangy almost. It'll be much sweeter in the morning as the yeast develops. All right, that's it for tonight, and we'll pick this up in the morning. Good morning. It is 8:30 in the morning, getting a little bit later start than I wanted, but I just wanted to go over the things you will need to bake your sourdough today. So you want to have a large mixing bowl. You want to have a scale that goes to past 3,000 grams. Metal strainer. This will be to proof one loaf as well as cool another. Handy dandy spatula. Plastic wrap parchment paper. Sea salt. Obviously our flour, and then a Dutch oven. Of course our starter that we fed last night. So first step will be to mix 1,000 grams of flour with 800 grams of water, and because of my elevation I do about 780 grams. Then we're going to mix that and let it rest for 30 minutes. As you can see, we measured out our 1,000 grams of flour. Simply add our water. And we were going for 780 grams of water, but 8 extra grams is not a big deal. I'm gonna mix this by hand. I use a serving fork. Okay, we mixed that up and we're gonna let this rest for 30 minutes. It's gonna look lumpy. We just basically wanna get all the dry spots out. Not to worry, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're gonna mix this at least 4 to 5 more times. We're gonna cover this with some plastic wrap, and we'll be back in 30 minutes. Okay, so we've had our dough rest for about 30 minutes, and now we're gonna add our starter, 150 grams, and 20 grams of salt. So our starter this morning would smell pretty good. Definitely a lot sweeter than it did last night. So we're gonna stir this up real nice, and then all right, this is what it looks like, and then I'm just gonna mix this by hand. Usually I need 2 hands, so we'll see how this goes with one. And we're just gonna kind of grab it from the bottom and flip it on top of itself. It's gonna be sticky and wet, and that's why we also have the spatula to get this off of our hands, as well as take it from the bowl. So I need 2 hands, but I'll show you what it looks like when we're done mixing. Okay, we've pitched our starter in salt. We've mixed it in by hand using the stretch and fold method, and we're gonna let this rest for a half hour, and then we'll be back to stretch and fold, and we'll do that a total of 4 times. See you in 30 minutes. As you can see, the consistency has already changed, and it will continue to change as we do these stretch and flips. And when I say stretch and flip, that's basically my interpretation of kneading the dough. So instead of taking it out of the bowl, we're just gonna leave it in there. And again, this is gonna change consistency each time. And what we're doing is we're changing the actual gluten structure of the loaf with this process. Okay, we're gonna do another 30 minutes of rest. All right, it is now 10 o'clock and we're ready for our second flip and fold. And I'll show you what it looks like after this one. As you can see, the gluten is starting to take hold on its own and it's starting to have some shape. And this will fold back down into the bowl as it rests. And we'll take a look in 30 minutes. See you then. All right, gang, we're about to do our third stretch and flip, and as you can see, the starter is really starting to get after the dough. We have some bubbles happening, and that is all good. So you can see also how much the dough has changed. Alrighty, we'll let that rest for 30 minutes and we'll see you at 11 o'clock. It's 10:30 right now. We are going to stretch and flip and fold for our last time. But before I started, I failed to show you. It's starting to pull away from the sides and leaven on its own, so that's what we want. I should have looked at that before I started, but this has got a great consistency. It smells sweet. A little tangy, nice sourdough smell. So after our final flip here, we're gonna let this rest and leaven for 5 hours. And we'll check it then. We could bake in 5 hours if we have a good rise, but I usually try and give it a little bit extra. It's just one thing I've noticed, but it's warm today, so we should get a good rise. So we will cover this, and I like to put it right on top of the refrigerator so it's elevated out of the way. And we'll check back in about 4 o'clock. See you then. Okay, good afternoon. As you can see, our dough has really taken off. It's risen quite a bit. It's just about to the lip of the bowl. We could definitely bake with this if we'd like. So what I'll do is I'll preheat the oven with the Dutch oven inside of it for 480. And we'll let that preheat and then we'll be ready to rip. All right, folks, we have been preheating our oven at 480 for about 45 minutes, almost an hour now. The Dutch oven is in there, so we're gonna take this out, our dough, and get ready. We're actually baking 2 loaves. So I've cleaned this counter off real nice, and we're just going to put it right on the counter. And then I'm going to separate this in half. So there's 2 options here, and I'm going to show you my preferred and then a secondary. So you can see we got a little bit more with this one, and we'll just add it right here. So they're about the same size. Okay, the one on the left we're going to put right in the oven, and the one on the right we're actually going to add to a proofing basket. So we're just going to go ahead and flip this a couple more times and put it into our floured proofing basket. I've pre-floured that and we'll cover that. This one is going to go right onto our parchment paper. and into our Dutch oven. Come get a better view closer. Excuse me. Put the lid back on. And we're going to bake for 35 minutes. All right, our timer went off, so we baked for 35 minutes. I'm going to take this out, rotate it 180 degrees, take the lid off. You want to get some footage of this? This is what we're looking at right now. But we're going to leave the lid off to brown it. The baking sheet is so that the bottom of the crust doesn't get too crispy. Okie doke. So we've now browned our bread for the last 10 minutes. We're just going to take it out by the parchment paper. We're going to set it right here and let it cool just a little bit and pull the parchment paper hopefully right off. It's stuck a little bit. I'm going to let it cool just a bit and then get the rest of that out. All right, we're ready for our second loaf. And what I'll do is I'll flour this just a little bit. This parchment paper, so that way it might not stick as bad. What we're going to do is take the parchment paper, hopefully not dump it all over the counter here. This is the second method, like I said, which involves a little bit of proofing, which to me, I usually skip this step because if you don't flour your kitchen linen enough, it will stick just like it did, and it's actually adding a lot more flour. But we'll see how this one turns out, and then we can compare. So here we are. I'm going to put this into the Dutch oven. Put the lid on. And in for 35 minutes. Here's our first loaf. Turned out pretty well. I was able to use a paring knife and get all the parchment paper off the bottom of it, but it's cooling on the colander, and you can see it's got a nice flaky, crispy crust, and it'll be a good one. So here we are with the second loaf on the left, and it's covered in flour, and so it's a little bit messier. But the proofing, to me, I just don't see too much difference when it comes to how much rise I get out of the bake. So I typically I haven't been proofing, but we're gonna cut into the first loaf and take a look how it looks. So as you can see, we have a nice crumb on there, and it should be pretty tasty. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll get you baking. All right, thank you.